So welcome back, everyone. Keep using the online chat. We love hearing from you, and let's keep the conversation going. So my name is Amanda, and I'll be chairing the next few sessions. So before I introduce the next speaker, I would also like to acknowledge and pay my respect to the traditional custodians of the unceded lands on which I live and work, Dharawal country, and pay my respect to elders past, present, and emerging. I also extend that acknowledgement and respect to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people present here today. So I'd like to introduce our next speaker for the session, Hayley Hillson. Hayley holds the position of Library Technician at Torrens University Australia, based in the Adelaide campus. Her background is in vet and higher education libraries. She's part of the ALIA SA Committee and the Salem South Australian Library Information Network Committee. She loves to provide relevant and tangible help to students and staff. Without further ado, over to you, Hayley.
Thank you very much, Amanda, for that introduction. I also like to thank Alia as well for allowing me to present this presentation today. This is my first time presenting in an Alia conference. So I'm really excited and nervous at the same time. So thank you very much. Hopefully you get something out of this, and all the other presentations have been really useful and brilliant, and yeah, great to have some ideas to take away. So my presentation today is on COVID-19 made us work together nationally. But first of all, Torrens University Australia acknowledges the Australian Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples as the first inhabitants of the nation and the traditional custodians of the lands where we live, learn and work. Torrens University Australia respectively acknowledges their ancestors, elders past and present, and I am located on the Kaurna lands. So Amanda's already given you a quick introduction, but about me, I'm a qualified library technician. I worked at TAFE Safe for over 9 years, and I worked at different various campuses during that time. I also worked at the Adelaide Theological Library for 7 years. I was also part of the ANSLA Association, which is the Australian New Zealand Theological Libraries Association, and I've done a couple of presentations with them. Yes, I am the current member of the ALIA Committee and also current member of the SALN, South Australian Library Information Network. I'm currently studying a Bachelor of Applied Social Science in Community Services, and I've been working at Torrens University since 2017. So Torrens University Australia is Australia's international university and vocational registered training organisation built on the shoulder of giants. They were founded in 2013 through partnership with some of Australia's most renowned education providers who share a purpose-driven and passionate approach to teaching in order to create courses that are designed to place passionate people in careers they love. So Torrens University Australia is a private university, and still today not a lot of people sort of know of Torrens University Australia, and we're still considered like a baby sort of university. So in Torrens University Australia in 2020, we had over 300,000 plus courses offered to our students, and we also had over 20,000 students. In 2020, they had 5 campuses in Sydney, 1 campus in the Blue Mountains, 2 campuses in Melbourne, 1 campus in Adelaide, and that's where I'm located, 2 campuses in Brisbane, 1 campus in Auckland, and 1 campus in China. So you might be wondering how in those so many years we got, that sort of many students. Well, Torrens University kind of partnershiped with a number of different pre-existing institutional organisations. So in the area of design, they sort of made a partnership with Billy Blue, Media Design School. They also partnershiped in the Blue Mountains International Hotel Management School, William Blue. In business, they partnership with Chifley Business School. In health, they partnered with the Southern School of Natural Therapies, and so many, and a few other sort of pre-existing sort of colleges. So Torrens University Australia has courses in design, health, business, hospitality, technology, education and research being higher degree and PhD. So the library technicians in Australia we had 7 in Sydney, 2 in Blue Mountains, 4 in Melbourne, 1 in Adelaide, 1 in Brisbane, and none in Auckland, none in China. And so some of the staff in some of the interstate colleges kind of had been working there for a number of years, and there was the 2 that had worked in the Blue Mountains. So several of these library technicians came with sort of different ideas and different collections. Mine's the smallest collection out of all the campuses, and some of them have much larger collections. So we all had our own unique sort of quirks to our collections, as well as our students as well. So this presentation today is mainly about the library technicians team. So what the library technicians were doing pre-COVID-19 was we mainly were helping predominantly with face-to-face students. But we also had gaps of support for our online and remote students. What we did offer for our online remote students was we used to do postage delivery. If a book wasn't available as an ebook, we would post a physical book to them, or we would do a scan chapter. Once a month, we would have a library technician meeting, and we would sort of go around the round table saying what we've been up to and what things we've been doing on our campus. We also had international students coming into the country, and sometimes we have international students come in, like they just landed the day before and they hadn't had any orientation or anything, so you had to bring them up to speed. So that was quite, challenging at times, and also having to help and support those students who've only just landed in the country the previous day. The main contact methods that people had with the library was in person, email, or phone. All of us also gave workshops on campus, but there wasn't any real structure. We all invented our own workshops. We did them suitable to our students. It was sort of like reinventing the wheel all the time, and we didn't know exactly what each other were doing either. And we did have an online chat, but it was very limited use, so not too many students were using it. So then we had the dreaded COVID-19 shutdown. So the campuses all shut down late March. We then obviously had no students coming into the country. Everybody was working from home, everyone having to do tech issues, internet issues, all that sort of bizzo. But one thing that I really was pleased of is our library team management, the librarians and our executive were actually prepared for this in case there was a shutdown. So they were sort of doing a stock take of what people had at home, what internet people had. They were sort of saying, okay, if we have to have a shutdown, we may have to give some of you training on how to do more on the online chat and those sorts of things. So that was quite good. They were kind of foreseeing that this was actually going to start happening. And then they started doing what's called a buddy system with team members outside the library team. So the library team sits within a team called Learning Services. So we sit alongside academic skills, which helps students with their academic skill development. And then we sit with our Blackboard team. So Blackboard is the learning platform that students use. And so there's a team that goes behind that. So they did a buddy system where I might have a buddy with someone from the Blackboard academic skills. And that way you had someone that you can just talk to about anything and everything, just so that at least you had some sort of connections. We also then were offered increased in professional development in the areas of online facilitation, as well as online chat as well. So that gave us more confidence and skills in order to do online chat, but also do online facilitation of workshops. One of the sort of the starting things that they did to increase our staff connections with each other, and it was some of our own initiatives, was that we started doing a weekly casual library technician catch up. So this was every Wednesday for an hour, and we could talk about anything and everything. So you started to get to know each other on a personal and also on a work level. And sometimes you might say, hey, did anyone do this or that? It was a really good way So it was a lot more seen of each other of my team compared to, where we had once a month. We still did continue the formal library technician once a month meeting, just for those usual protocol things that we needed to do. Then they also started doing a whole of a library team meeting once a month. So that included the library technicians, the librarians, as well as the director of our team as well. So it was good to be able to know what the librarians are doing. It was good for them to know what us library technicians were doing as well. And then every fortnight, they then had a broader library learning services team meeting. So that's with academic skills, library, and the Blackboard team, as well as our director. So then we got to hear things fed down from the top of the university, and also we got to know what other teams are doing as well. So those were some really good ways of increasing our connections to each other. We also expanded our library services during 2020. Instead of our library chat being Monday to 9 to 5, it then expanded to 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. We also started doing online contextualized classes, online study success workshops, online virtual orientation, and also the increase in acquisitions of new material or increased licenses for ebooks. So how we came together for students. So with the online chat service, like I said, we all had professional development, and we're still trying to continue that as we speak. We all took it in turns in performing the evening roster. So with it being stuff from 9 till 9, we obviously needed someone to do the late shift. So we all took it in turns. So we all felt really played a part. We also helped each other with inquiries. So if a student came on the chat and we didn't know sure what to do, we would go into our internal sort of chat and we'd say, hey, I've got a student asking this. Does anyone know? And someone would say, yep, because we all worked in our own individual campus and we all had our own specialties. Some people had more expertise in some databases or services than others. So that's where we could rely on each other. And we're a very fully flowing information team. And I have found that in working in libraries that we're all willing to share information. We also, like I said, started doing online contextualized classes. So that's going into a classroom to help target a particular class, say, for example, a nutrition class, and we would help them finding information or give them the tools and strategies for their first assessment. So we would show them the databases they may need to use for that assessment, but as well as the strategies as well. So the Boolean operators, the keywords, search strategies, and so on and so forth. So what we did was we started forming into little groups. So there was like 3 or 4 of us maybe going into a nutrition class, and we would develop resources and slides so that it was all the same thing. And then there'll be 3 or 4 people looking at a business class, and so on and so forth. So we all sort of kind of, again, took it in turns, shared the load, and we also made sure that all our slides and all our resources are pretty consistent, none of this reinventing the wheel. And we also shared a feedback with each other of how that session went. So then that way we're sort of like, okay, this is what we can do for next time. We also then started doing online study success workshops. So these are things like how to use the library, how to find journal articles, how to use Mendeley, which is a referencing software. Again, we all took it in turns. So in the month of June, 3 or 4 people did those workshops. In July, a next lot of people did it. So we all took it in turns and we helped build upon each month as well. And again, we had the same sort of set of content or format that we're going to cover. Then that way there's nothing new and we're not reinventing the wheel every time. The university also had to start doing some orientations, and they had to obviously do it in virtual orientation format. So we took it in turns and being a library representation on that team as well. There was the library was fortunate enough to get a large bucket of money from the university to obviously increase our acquisitions of new material and increase our licenses. Obviously, campuses were closed, students were turning to ebooks or online resources like our databases. we had to boost that all up. So sometimes if a student came on, if we had a lot of queries coming on the chat for a particular book, we would say, okay, we will pass this on to the librarian. We would pass that query on to the librarian and said, hey, we're noticing a number of inquiries from students saying this book is needed, it needs to be an ebook format. The librarian would then go and look into how we can purchase that ebook. And sometimes there have been, even still, there's been some areas where we haven't been able to acquire something in an ebook because it's only in print format or the author doesn't want to put it in an ebook format. So the librarians have had to negotiate with the lecturers or the teachers. Is there alternatives for students to use? And then we might give those alternatives to those students. So yeah, doing the workshops and doing the chat services and that, we've been more aware of what things have been heavily used. And also, we've also been having to do educate students of the benefits of using ebooks as well. And so we do a lot of that in our study success workshops as well as our chat service. So these are some statistics. I wasn't able to provide exact numbers, but hopefully this graph can give you a bit of an idea. The use of our database has almost doubled in comparison to 2019, and the total usage includes searches, requests, and item investigations. So of course, us doing the online contextualized classes, the online chat, and the study success workshop, because we were able to promote our databases in a lot more of a different way to what we were doing. And in person, we're reaching a large number of students now compared to what we were doing before. So our databases just went through the roof. And also we've been able to acquire some new databases as well to help students with their assessments. The next one was our ebook usage. As like many other libraries, people couldn't turn to print books, so they were turning to ebooks. So our ebook usage has more than doubled since the same period last year. And the usage is based on the total item requests as well. So they just went through the roof as well. And like I said, the librarians had to do a lot of negotiation and discussions and communications with lecturers to suggest alternative books or resources if we weren't able to obtain them in an ebook format as well. And so I feel us getting things in ebook format means there's a greater accessibility for students, as well as it doesn't matter where a student's located, whether in Australia, India, Brazil, wherever they are in the world, they can be able to access the same resource, which is fabulous. Whereas in the pre-COVID-19 sort of world, only students who came on campus could access a print book, or we would maybe be able to send one to a student. So I feel that ebooks have given a lot more accessibility to students. But of course, ebooks have their downside as well. I'm still old school. I still love my print books. And also our chat, the use of this service has almost tripled since 2019 as well. So these are just a couple of comments from students. She's the best librarian I've ever met, so kind, and taught me how to find books via Zoom. I'm so impressed and happy now. Thank you so much. Always helpful and friendly, even though it is 9 p.m, she still assists me on my confusion. Very much appreciated. So one of the good things about chat is that they enabled the Zoom platform. So it meant that we could be able to share our screen, or the students could share their screen. So that way we could actually see the student physically as well. And also when students came on the chat and they said, hey, I've got this error message. What does this mean? We can go, hey, can you share your screen? Okay, that must be a technical issue, or maybe I can help you, navigate. So yeah, click this button, click this button. And so, sometimes screen sharing is a lot better than sort of the typing, but also with our chat service, if students come on with a question that is outside of our scope in the library, we might say you might need to go to student services or your success coach, all these other relevant services. So we're sort of not only a library chat now, but we're also an information service as well. So the chat has been very heavily used now as well, even now during the lockdowns that we've been having. So yeah, it's been quite good. So final words. COVID sucks. I'm sure most of us all sort of agree COVID sucks. It's had its negatives and also it's had its positives. And so one of the positives for me is that with COVID, I got to know my colleagues a lot closer than what I used to. I suffered with mental health issues during working from home. And so having those regular meetings and chats and little working groups within my library technician team sort of helped me through some of those mental health issues. I guess we've still got some challenges ahead of us. So, for example, in South Australia, we've been open a lot more than, say, my New South Wales and Victoria counterparts. So I've been having to juggle face-to-face students, online chat, workshops and so on, and spreading myself across a number of things. Whereas my colleagues in the eastern states have mainly been obviously working from home, only dealing with one sort of medium. So next year, when things open up in New South Wales and Victoria, when students and staff are allowed to go back onto campuses, I guess they will have to obviously deal with some of those issues that I've been doing. But I know we'll work it all through together. I can give my hints and tips to them. And yeah, it'll be interesting as to, the path forward with borders opening up and when we can allow students to come back into the country. And I think we're having to review our services and that all the time. So, and we have this motto at Torrens University Australia, or a couple of mottos. One is we begin and end with people. And the last thing is love what you do. And I love working with my library technician team at Torrens University Australia. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Hayley, for that wonderful presentation. And thank you for being so honest about mental health as well. I think sometimes it's really important to acknowledge and have those candid discussions about mental health. And it's also really great that it brought you and your team closer together as well. So that's really nice. We do have a question that's come through. One of the attendees would like to know, did the librarians or the library technicians develop the content for delivery?
I think it was a bit of both. It was a bit of the librarians sort of negotiating or discussing with the lecturers as to what content they would like us to cover. And we also looked at the assessment briefs of the subject outline, and the librarians talking with the teachers. So then we worked with the librarians as to develop sort of workshops and sort of PowerPoint slides and best resources. So we kind of worked together in that sense in sort of what content was going to be covered for those sorts of contextualized classes, as well as the study success workshops as well.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Hayley, and thanks for answering the question. Okay, so we will take a short break before we move on to our next speaker. So please take a break, take some screen time away from your screen time, stretch a little bit, and we'll see you very shortly. And thank you again, Hayley.